Hello, and you're listening to Paradise Preview Season 2, Episode 17. Let's look ahead to Celts game against Dundee. So, Paradise Preview is back for our last show of the year, on Christmas Eve, of course. Graham, how's the festive period going for you?
Quite well so far. Got all of my shopping done, wrapped all of the presents, so it's just time to eat and open the presents that everybody else has gotten me. How about yourself?
Yeah, I've got my first Christmas present of the season so far. A nice t-shirt for a nice kind of buffet tonight. But,
lovely.
Yeah, but today we're not getting at that kind of stuff. We're looking forward to Celts game against Dundee on Boxing Day. It's always good to have a Celtic game on Boxing Day, you know, where just lying around the house, nothing else on telly, just put on the Celtic game.
Yeah, no question. You know, we're returning to the site of Neil Lennon's first game as a Celtic player, debuting in the midfield away to Dundee. So obviously that's going to conjure up good memories, and this would be obviously the first time that he'd be traveling to Dundee as Celtic manager. You know, the last time we played against them, you know, it seems like it wasn't all that long ago, but we didn't have the easiest time, you know, going into that tie. It seemed as though we'd sort of breeze through it. 2-0 victory, but, you know, they came in, they did the usual packing the box and so on. Now, they've had a rough go of it, Dundee, I'm speaking about at this point. 12 points, they're at the bottom of the SPL table by 6 points themselves, with a game in hand no less. But, you know, their form as of late has not been all that well, losing their last three games, one at home and two away. So they're on a bit of a skid at the moment, but, you know, as Neil Lennon has referenced in the media, they really don't have anything to lose in this tie. The only good thing, and this is sort of odd to highlight, but it's the fact that we're playing away from home, where the majority of our very good form thus far this season has been. Much of the firepower coming from Dundee, and you know, I say that with a grain of salt. I mean, there's only a limited amount. I mean, in their past 7 games, they've scored 4 goals, you know, and their opponents have been able to keep a clean sheet more often than not. So there really isn't much of an attack, much of a firepower sort of element to it. But what do you expect Celtic to do to try and take the game to Dundee? Now, obviously, missing James Forrest over the past several months has been a detriment to the Celtic side. I mean, no further evidence was needed than the past weekend's game when James Forrest came on and just absolutely changed the dynamic and the scope of the game. And especially with Chris Commons being out injured, we really don't have that creative spark or a bit of attacking flair coming from the midfield and trying to link up with the strikers. But, you know, with that being said, Neil Lennon's come out. He said that Lasad is down with the flu, so it's questionable as to whether or not he's going to play. But Neil Lennon also did make reference to Miku being available. So, you know, once again, we just when Miku thinks, or when we think that Miku is done, he seems to you know, figure out a way to factor back in. What are your expectations going into this game in terms of how Celtic's going to cut open Dundee?
Well, Dundee, you know, you look at the league table and it looks like they're doing really bad, but in the games that I've watched them, they've not actually been that terrible. It's just really when they lose a game, they lose it quite convincingly. It's always like a kind of like they concede 3 or 4 goals. They don't really kind of concede 1 goal and like lose by 1 goal, or it's a draw. They're not bad in the midfield and defence. They're not terrible, but the fact is they can't really put in that many goals up front because they didn't really get much of a warning into coming into SPL, so they couldn't really look out for talent that would be able to fit into the SPL level.
Well, and they couldn't get the financial windfall from Sevco injecting all sorts of money into the SFL. Yeah, obviously I have to say that.
Mm-hmm. So I think just going into it, we just need to keep it tight at the back, keep a high pace in the game, and just, you know, really spread the back line and make sure we can get the good balls into the box that did us so well against Ross County, especially when James Forrest came back in the side. We're just finding loads of space behind them, which isn't like Ross County so far this season. You know, to find space behind the back line, usually they do keep it quite tight at the back.
Yeah, no question. You know, a team like Ross County, you know, they haven't won many games, but they have a lot of spirit and they fight very hard. I mean, Derek Adams has them ready to play. They've been on the wrong side of many results thus far, but that's in a certain sense, I mean, that's a good team. That's a team that really took us to the brink in August when we went up to Ross County. But speaking about Dundee, Neil Lennon has, it seems, reverted towards the three at the back, and we've seen a couple of different consummations. A 3-5-2, being the most natural, and then also a 3-4-3, almost taking a page out of Pep Guardiola's book. Last weekend, we saw three strikers in the form of Lasad, Samaras, and Gary Hooper. It's been just delightful to see the resurgence of Gary Hooper. We've referred to his presence in the team and maybe being asked to do something a bit different, a bit out of his comfort zone, especially with the absence of Anthony Stokes, maybe dropping a bit further back, maybe exploring and exploiting wide spaces to try and open up space for a partner striker. And in the past, he's not had much success doing that, and that's taken away from his strike rate. But what we've seen over the past 2 to 3 games is everything is clicking. It seems as though it's clicked in the gear where he's really doing a lot of that hard work quite well, and he's also rediscovered his shooting boots. He scored 2 goals from headers, which is not something that you typically expect from Gary Hooper. But getting back to the formation, do you expect Neil Lennon to continue on with his 3 at the back, especially going up against a side like Dundee, who's going to more often than not revert back to that 4-4-2?
Well, I think it depends on injuries. Against Ross County, we had 4 men at the back with Ambrose playing at right back. So I'm not sure how Matthews and Lustig is doing. I don't think Lustig will be back. I'm not too sure what's happening with Adam Matthews. So, if one of the 2 don't come back for this game, which is doubtful, I think we'll probably go with a standard 4 at the back again. Maybe Ambrose at right back again. He didn't do bad in that position. He can play well in midfield as well. As for the midfield and up front, last time we went with a 4-3-3, but with James Forrest come back and how successful he did, I don't know if Neil Lennon might change to a 4-4-2, which will give us slightly more width than the 4-3-3, especially if you're talking about Lasad being injured, who was sort of playing on the right hand side of Guy Hooper and George Samaras on the left.
Well. Yeah.
So if James Forrest is 100% fit, ready to go, then we might play a 4-4-2. If he isn't, it could kind of be the same sort of 4-3-3 with Kyle, Wanyama and Brown in the middle, which has been doing really well. Brown getting the first goal against Ross County yesterday as well, a really well worked goal from Scott Brown. So it's not easy to predict how he's going to approach this game. I'm going to say he'll either go with a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2. Personally, I like to see the 4-4-2.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. I mean, you bring up a couple very good points there. First off, James Forrest, it seemed as though he felt his hamstring towards the late stages of that game against Ross County. And he was able to see out the rest of the game. So fortunately, that's going to be nothing serious, and he can continue his rehab and getting back into the starting 11. I'm not so sure that he's quite ready yet. And to be quite honest, he has really taken the game by the scruff of the neck when he's come on as a substitute. So maybe, having him as a resource in that element, I think might do a lot of good for the side in general. You also bring up Kyle, who, has really reinvented himself as well into a more of an attacking sort of central midfielder, as opposed to in the past where he was just sort of that basher in the middle, that holding midfielder that was going to dispossess and distribute up the park. He's really expanded his game and developed his ability back to goal, which I'd like to see. We're going to need a lot of link up, especially through the center channels. And long may that last, his development in sort of a different role, reinventing himself, if you will. So he's going to be absolutely vital, especially with Joe Ledley getting the next month or so off to rest his groin and be fully fit for the Champions League campaign forthcoming. But yeah, I think a midfield of obviously Wanyama is undroppable at this point. Scott Brown has completely healed himself. I don't know what Brown is doing, but next trick I'm expecting is water into wine. And Kyle, as I mentioned, has been superb as well. The only question then, with Lasad being out, is might we see the re-entrance of Miko?
When Neil Lennon says that he's going to give Miko another chance, I wasn't sure, when he'd come back into the side. I was kind of expecting him to get a few games before January. But with the form that Lasad has been in, he's not really got any game time so far, and I'd expect him to get some game time before now. He didn't even get some game time in the Ross County game.
And wasn't even available on the bench. I think the most uh, likely outcome would probably be Tony Watt, and this is long overdue. But let's get down into the predictions. The score lines. How do you see the starting 11 setting up, and then what's your predicted score for this tie?
Well, I would like to see the 4-4-2, but I can kind of see Neil in and go with a 4-3-3. Ambrose, Wilson, Mulgrew, and Izagiri, a solid back line. In midfield, I think he'll go with Kyle, Wanyama and Brown, who have been working really well together. Samers on the left, Hooper up front, and either Miku, James Forrest or Lassad on the kind of right hand side. Yeah, that's all I can really say.
I'd agree with that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ronya get a run out. I'm not sure in terms of what the status is of his fitness. He hasn't gotten much of a look, obviously, through injury, and he had a bit of turmoil through his agent and so on from that. But I wouldn't be surprised to see in one of these games, we do have a pileup of fixtures over the next 10 days or so. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Thomas Ronya come in and make an appearance. But with that being said, I think it's essential that we have Izagiri available for this game. With the lack of attacking options from the midfield, he's going to need license to go bombing up the left-hand side and try and get some attacking endeavor. So with that, I agree with your assessment. I think Ambrose on the right-hand side with Wilson and Mulgrew, that would essentially set us up for a 3-5-2 on a pivot, where Izagiri gets that license to get up the park. If Mulgrew can slide over and cover for him, then obviously, that takes a lot of the relief, or provides a lot of relief, rather. But, the midfield three of Kyle, Brown, and Wanyama, obviously that picks itself. And then up top, it's going to be Gary Hooper. I keep expecting Tony Watt to get a run out, and Miku is really the wild card. Sammy's played a lot of football lately. He's felt his back in the past couple of games. You can see it. You can sense it. Maybe this park doesn't quite set up to his strong suit. He likes wide open swaths of space. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Sammy get dropped, but and through no lack of form or detriment. But scoreline. What's your prediction?
I'm going to predict a 3-1.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to say 2-0. Like we talked about earlier, Dundee doesn't really quite have the firepower, and it's just a nice round number. And I expect Gary Hooper to continue the scoring ways and to push on into the new year.
Yep. So this is the last part of this preview episode of 2012. It's been a fantastic year. And we'll see you back in 2013 with episode 18.
Happy holidays, Josh.
Happy holidays.